Did you miss us? D'Angelo Russell is reportedly a Mav. We're going to break it down next on this emergency pod. It's the DLLS Mavs podcast. It is the DLLS Mavs podcast, folks. We just ended, but D'Angelo Russell said, I know you don't. Come right back here, sit down in that chair right there, and let me show you how it's done. My name is Bobby Corella. Joining me is Tim Cato. Tim, are you still doing well?
I'm still doing well. I'm doing weller. Now that we have a Mavs free agency move.
They did a thing. We poked them with the stick, and they listened. We still got Tanner in the producer's chair over there. You will notice Kevin Gray is gone. He has more important stuff to do. It's his daughter's birthday, so they're out painting the town red. Tim, news broke literally like 30 seconds after we were done recording our pod. D'Angelo Russell reportedly comes to an agreement with the Mavs on a 2-year deal worth roughly $12 million. That is according to Mark Stein and other media reports. Little bio info, D'Angelo Russell has been in the league for 10 years now, believe it or not. Last season, started the year with the Lakers, ended it with the Nets. Across 58 games, averaged 12.6 points on 39% shooting from the floor, 31.4% from three. Career lows in both of those marks, although just the couple seasons prior to that, he was actually really good. Really super efficient player. Averaged 5 assists, 2 turnovers. Mavs get him on the taxpayer mid-level exception. Initial thoughts on the deal?
You've got to start with the idea that he was bad last season. He had a bad season in 2 stops. The Lakers didn't really want him. That was made clear early on. And, he was coming off the bench for them, where he had previously been pretty much a locked-in starter. And then he got shipped to Brooklyn, who was not trying to win, very overtly not trying to win. So situationally, neither were perfect fits for D'Angelo and what he is. And the Mavericks are making this deal assuming that he's much closer to the guy he's been in the past, much closer to the guy he was 2 years ago for the Lakers than what we saw last season. Perhaps you could say that the reason he was willing to sign on the taxpayers mid-level was that he had a down year, so maybe it benefited them in that way. But very obviously, Dallas is assuming that D'Angelo Russell is more capable than what he showed last year in a couple, very different, not ideal spots. I think D'Angelo Russell can do 2 things for sure. He can score and he can shoot. Dallas needs shooting. They really need shooting. If you look at the free agency market, or even players that they could potentially have traded for, outside of Kobe White, there's not really a single name that you could point out and say, this is a guard, a playmaking guard, who's a better shooter than D'Angelo Russell. Again, last season, the shooting it fell. It was a lot worse. But throughout his career, this is a guy who shot 37%. You just take the past 5 seasons he's played, and that includes a very, a down year. And he's like a 38% type guy. He's a guy who catches and shoots really well. 2 seasons ago as a spot-up guy, 1.2 points per possession.
That's very good.
It's very good. It's very good. It's exactly what Dallas needs in terms of making sure that there is space inside the arc for Anthony Davis and Cooper Flagg, because Anthony Davis and Cooper Flagg are the 2 top options on this team. D'Angelo Russell will still get shots. He will still get points. And being able to score 15, 17, 18 points per game in the NBA, there's value in that, but you also have to look at the value of, you're going to get those points somewhere. Does this guy, does he do it in an efficient way? Does he help you in all the other ways? Does he maximize not just the points he's scoring? Does he maximize the amount of points that you're scoring as a team? Defensively, I think it's safe to say he doesn't. He has a bad defensive rep, and, just going by defensive estimated plus minus, probably the best catch-all stat out there. He's around where, Darius Garland was last year. Someone like that. He's kind of in that range. And that's not great, and it certainly doesn't help because Dallas still, in their immediate rotation, they still don't really have a point of attack defender. And for all the size that you put on the back line, for all the size you put towards the rim, it gets harder and harder to successfully make those rotations and be present to stop a shot at the rim if you're having to do it 3 or 4 times per possession. So that's an immediate concern with him. There's also just, he's not a driver. This is something you've pointed out, Bobby, about 10 drives per game. You know, I think it was 10. I've wrote about it. And like, that's less than Evan Mobley was doing last year. That's less than Najee Marshall, just to name a couple guys. That said, I do think that, you know, he still tallies a lot of assists. He clearly is doing it less and less off the dribble. I think from what I've seen and what I've read and what I've come to understand on D'Angelo Russell is that a lot of his best passing moments are more standstill, are more picking out passes and people and off-ball movement, people circulating around him. And that does play well with Dallas, who's going to have Klay Thompson, who's going to be moving on you know, away from the ball. They're going to have guys near the rim at all times, pretty much. You know, they're never going to go fully 5 out. And if you're near the rim, that means that if the defense slips for just a moment, all of a sudden you may have an open dunk. You just may find yourself in a little bit of room, and it, you know, with the right type of passer, they can thread that pass, they can get the ball there. Certainly dribble handoff type stuff is, I think, more appealing for D'Angelo's game than elsewise. And, you know, I think there's a lot of reasons to think this is an acceptable move, to think that this makes sense as a innings eater, as a guy who is certainly going to make sure that the backcourt, you know, that the point guard position that he's playing is going to be competent. Regular season competent. I don't think this turns Dallas into a title contender. And we talked a lot on the show we just wrapped up that, you know, it's just so hard. I mean, D'Angelo Russell is not going to be Kyrie Irving. That is just not going to happen. We know that, and missing Kyrie for about 60 games, 50 games, whatever it ends up being, that's a really difficult thing to go into next season planning for. But I do think when you look at the totality of all the options, if I was trying to win next year, I might have gone harder trying to find somebody through trades and been more willing to trade a PJ Washington or a Daniel Gafford to make that happen. But Dallas still has all those guys available, and they have a lot of flexibility to adjust. If the path was to go sign somebody through free agency, if that was the path Dallas was convinced that they were going to be on, there isn't really a name, a free agent guard that you can toss at me that I'm more in on than D'Angelo Russell, even with some of his flaws.
Well, that's my issue because, you know, you touched a lot of, so I'm trying to respond to like
that was a really long
No, it's all good.
I was just trying to, I had a lot to say. Apparently.
Yeah, no, but then I was like, okay, well, I want to say this. No, I'm going to say this.
We can work back through it.
Kyrie is going to be out for the first 40 or 50 games of the season, you know, optimistically. And so the Mavs have kind of said, look, you know, we're just trying to find a stopgap guy that can keep the team organized until Kyrie comes back, and then he's going to put on his cape and take us to the promised land, which is certainly possible. And, you know, that belief, in my opinion, has only been solidified by the Shams' report that D'Lo has a player option for year 2. So this could essentially just be a 1-year deal. If he has a really good season. If he has a very poor season, he'll opt in, and then they'll worry about it then.
You want him to opt out.
Well, it would
he had
mean
a good,
yeah.
That means he had a good season and he could command more money. And he's not. If he's opting into his deal, that means this went very poorly.
Yeah, and that would not be very good.
That would be a very bad situation.
That'd be really, really bad, in fact. But you know, they gave essentially a 1-year deal to this guy, which means they really do believe that it is just a stopgap. If they thought he was really good and worth it, then they would put more guaranteed years on it. And maybe he wouldn't agree to that deal because he thinks he's worth more than that, or whatever the case is. But I just don't believe that playmaking is something that you should say, yeah, we'll just do a stopgap. It's all good. Like, we're going to be fine. We're just going to get one guy, pretty maligned player. You know, he was a number 2 pick 10 years ago, and he's been kind of a journeyman since then. Like, it's all good. We're going to figure it out. Don't worry about it. It's going to be totally fine. I value playmaking much, much higher than that. I place a really, really high value on guys that are able to create, that are able to drive the lane, find shooters, that are able to run the pick and roll and set guys up, that are able to find lob guys, that are able to, just fit in a variety of ways on offense on a team that prides itself on its versatility. You need to be able to do a lot of different things, and I just don't really think he's that kind of player. And then defensively, I place a really high value on guys that can defend at the point of attack. The Mavs, their two most recent teams, they're successful teams, go back to 2022, Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock could both do that at a high level. Last season, whenever they were in the championship games, Derek Jones obviously was very good at that. Kyrie even stepped up, I thought, a lot in the playoffs, and PJ Washington had his moments. The two teams that did not do well in 2023, really their point of attack guys dropped off, and their playmaking dropped off a cliff. And then this season, after the Luka trade, and before that, whenever Luka was out, their playmaking dropped off a cliff, and they didn't have any point of attack defense, and they really suffered. And so it seems like the Mavs don't really value those two things to the same degree that I do, which is totally fine if their vision works out. But personally, I'm not in support of that. And so even though...
And you can look at the league, too. OKC, at their worst moments, they struggled because they didn't have enough playmaking.
Right, yeah.
But still...
And shooting, too. And shooting.
But until Kyrie gets back, they do not have a Shea level. Not to say Kyrie is quite at Shea's level, but they don't have a Shea level type guy. Cleveland, another team that used double bigs. Their three always was a high level point of attack guy. They just rotated a bunch of Dean Wade and Okoro and I'm blanking on
Max Strus.
Max
but
Strus.
Like that, where's that got in Cleveland in the last
right?
years,
And they also had two elite creative playmakers.
Yeah.
So
so the Mavs just don't really value that stuff to the same degree.
They're carving their own path, and we'll see if it works. But it is. I think it's worth pointing out, to your point, that it is a slightly different path than even comparable teams that have had success last season. I see their vision as being slightly different and does not include some of the strengths those teams had.
Exactly, yeah. And I think, I'm very bullish on Cooper Flagg. I think he's going to be really good. And maybe he can develop into that point forward type, but I just find it hard to believe he's going to be there this year. I mean, it would be amazing if he was, but guys just don't become that as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old rookie, And so right now, your two best playmakers that are available for opening night, if the season started today, which it doesn't, maybe the Mavs will make more moves, they would be D'Angelo Russell and they'd be Brandon Williams. And two-way player Ryan Nembhard, who's 5'11", and he can defend and he can shoot, but he's a 22-year-old rookie, undrafted guy. So I'm just a little worried, man. I'm a little worried. I do think, I've been a little harsh on D'Lo in the days leading up to this, just because I was really disappointed that they weren't aiming higher. I think D'Lo at 5.7 is a good deal, and I think he's a fine player. But I wish that they were willing to invest more resources into that position, because I think that position is worth the resources it would take to upgrade there.
And that's when you come to the argument of you're trying to replace Kyrie Irving, the most important part of this team. Maybe it's just not possible to fully replace him, especially with the idea that he's going to get back and needs to instantly be himself, or at least within a month. Even if he comes back in January, you need him to be himself by February to close the season strong. That's when Cooper is going to ideally be hitting even another level, and maybe you can make a really strong run at things. But it is pretty easy to see that this could be something more akin to a gap year for Dallas, where it's just very hard. Everybody's going through it. Tyrese Halliburton, Indiana's not looking at next season as if they're going to contend. Boston is very overtly skipping next season. The difference is that Kyrie
they don't
is
have any
supposed
bigs,
to come.
dude.
Yeah,
Luke Cornett's gone. He signed to the Spurs, and Al Horford's apparently going to be a Warrior. That's really annoying.
they're totally punny. Obviously, it is very different that Kyrie Irving got injured earlier and will be back next season. Every expectation is that Kyrie Irving is coming back next season. But you're seeing the big heavy hitters, guys who finished, who won playoff series. They're just saying, no, we cannot make this work without our All-NBA guy, who is the most important player on our team. And Kyrie is, you can argue whether it's him or Anthony Davis, but I don't think there's any question that Kyrie is the most important player for Dallas, because they have no guards, because they have no more creation, all NBA level elite creation. And so when you consider that, and when you consider Dallas was a play-in team, They were not a particularly impressive team, even as they started to get healthy down the stretch. Cooper Flagg is an enormous change. He definitely completely alters and disrupts what was a very bleak future, what was a very unfortunate forced gap year. If Dallas just went into next year without Cooper Flagg and they had, all they had done is just like they appear like they're intending to do this summer. If all they had done is just stood pat, they'd kept all their guys, and then they had signed D'Lo as the point guard. Or maybe they'd gone and got like 2 point guards. Maybe they were in on Colin Sexton in this scenario. If that's all they had done, it was going to be a gap year. There's no other way about it. Like that's the only obvious conclusion. Because Cooper has the ability to come in and be a plus NBA starter from the jump, which is what we believe, maybe even more than that. There is a bit more possibility that Dallas can do something next year, that D'Angelo is the right fill-in measure to get them there. The things that we've talked about, the creation, the point of attack defense, I think those things matter. I don't see where they are on the Dallas roster unless Caleb Martin suddenly starts making threes at a high clip again. If he figures out his offense, I actually have a very, very different view of what this team could be. But yeah, that's kind of the circumstance they're sitting in. And so in that context, D'Lo at that very, very reasonable number, in all likelihood, it's a 1-year deal. It's a stopgap. He is a shooter. He's the best shooter on the market. For all those reasons, I think this is fine. I think this is good. I think it makes sense. I just think that D'Lo and the entire strategy of running it back, when they have a rotation that, when healthy, even down a man, is going to really struggle to get everybody the minutes that they are expected getting last season.
I'm happy you brought that up.
Yeah.
Tanner, can you bring up Ethan's comment? Ethan Melton says the Mavs can trade 4 players for LeBron and still be deep. That is the move, man. I don't even care. I'm all in. Go get LeBron. Go trade for LeBron. So in order to do that, the money would work almost to the dollar if it was PJ, Gafford, Clay, and then any really of Najee or Max Christie or Caleb Martin. It would almost work to the dollar. And you're right, the Mavs still would be deep. Now, they are hard capped at the second apron because they use the exception, so they wouldn't actually be able to do that. They'd have to find some other ways to open up some money to fill out their team. But, I mean, they are deep. The Mavs are deep. The problem, like you said, though, Tim, is if you are in a situation where there's 13 or 14 guys available, a bunch of dudes are not going to play, and that is a little spooky. There's a lot of positional overlap, and you want a situation where you can have a lot of options.
You want me to go through the math again, just for fun?
Yeah, quickly, yeah.
Yeah, 48 minutes at point guard. Are we going to assume that D'Angelo and Brandon Williams will probably get most of that?
Yeah,
we'll see about Brandon.
Couple from Flagg.
We would like Brandon Williams to be getting 20 minutes, and D'Angelo is probably going to get 28.
Yep.
At shooting guard, actually, let's go to center. Just split it between Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. Boom, done, easy. Small forward, power forward. You've got 96 minutes to work with. If you give 34 minutes to Anthony Davis, that's what he averaged last season for the Lakers. You put Flagg at 32 minutes. You put PJ Washington at 32 minutes. Both very reasonable numbers, right?
Right.
You are now 2 minutes over. That is that they don't fit. That is 98 minutes. That's 96 minutes for those two positions. 98 when you smush those guys together. At shooting guard, Klay Thompson plays 24. Najee plays 24. That means Caleb Martin's out of the rotation. Max Christie's out of the rotation.
And you're paying those guys $15 million. Jaden Hardy, you're paying him $6 million. That's $21 million.
Yeah, Jaden Hardy. And look, that's how rotations go, and people are going to get hurt, and that is going to open up room and minutes for other people. But the Mavericks are saying, like, Max Christie, yeah, we really like him. He's part of the future. I think on opening day, or at least like the day after, because Jason Kidd loves to play all 15 players, the day after opening game, if this team's fully healthy, I'm not sure Max Christie's in the rotation. Or if he is, he's getting 10 minutes, and he feels like he doesn't have a consistent role. So at some point, this team's going to make a trade. At some point. And you can wriggle things up and down. Anthony Davis, maybe he should be playing 29 minutes per night.
Yeah.
But then how are you surviving without him on the court? It's you go on and on and on and on. It's a good situation to be in, but it is a situation that at some point there needs to be some resolution too, because I just do not see they have too many guys for too few minutes.
They sure could use a consolidation, in my opinion. And I forgot to mention Bronny would come back in that deal as well. So you'd get a little extra guard depth. And on a serious note, that is one less guy that you would need to sign in a very hypothetical, according to Mark Stein, unrealistic LeBron James trade scenario. So if you missed it, right before this, we did a free agency reaction, or really lack thereof pod, where we reacted to essentially just what the Grizzlies were doing. Apparently, Clint Capella just signed a deal with the Rockets. I have no idea how that.
How much money do they have?
I have no idea, and they also have like 35 bigs already. They got Şengün, Adams, and Clint Capella. Are they going to play? Are they going to do 2 bigs?
I guess the assumption is Adams. I mean, I know he's coming back, but he's kind of Capella's just better, and so he's going to play. Like Adams was good for them last year. I like him.
Okay,
but maybe Capella's just better. Big, I don't know. I guess.
I also don't know where that money came from, because they gave Dorian. That's got to be a sign and trade or something, right?
I find it,
because they just gave Dorian $53 million. They only have 14.
Is that no? That's more than biannual. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the Houston Rockets are cheating.
Karis LeVert's going to Detroit.
They need to be investigated. Hey, a player went to the East for once.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring up the
Capella thing, already East.
Yeah, I know, but they just stay East. Just stay East. There's 15 teams out there. Go stay out there. It's important because on this reaction pod, the Grizzlies made a bunch of moves. We reacted to some of the things the Suns were doing. Gambo, who's the radio guy out in Phoenix, he's really locked in and plugged in. He says Chris Paul is probably not the play for the Suns, which means he might go to the Clippers. That's the other logical outcome for him. The Spurs have been busy. They just went out and got Luke Cornett. So a lot of the teams, the Kings reportedly getting Schroeder, a lot of the teams around the Mavs and the standings are making a lot of moves, which I think does increase the pressure on Dallas to do something. I think D'Lo is fine, and I think that they're probably a better team with him than they were without him. But I think they need to get even better than that. If they want to compete, certainly for a top 6 spot and potentially even for a play-in spot, because 2 teams that missed the play-in last year, the Blazers and the Spurs, I expect to be potentially significantly better this year, or at least 5 wins better or something, and that would pass the Mavs. And then Phoenix, we'll see depending on what they do. They were active on draft night, and they might be able to make another couple moves. Bruce Brown goes back to the Nuggets. The Nuggets traded Michael Porter for Cam Johnson, so I think the Nuggets might be even better next year. The Rockets seemingly are getting better. The Wolves are keeping everyone except for maybe Nikhil, so they are going to be just as good, if not better. So I'm looking around for teams that the Mavs can pass, and I'm seeing more teams in the rearview mirror than I'm seeing teams ahead that are making me want to go with barbecue chicken. So I don't know, man. Do you think if you were, I don't even want to do if you were running the Mavs, do you believe for the Mavs to have a realistic shot going into the season at a top 6 seed, which is ultimately what you want? 7th is not good. You want 6. Do you think they need to make a move, or are you comfortable enough with this roster? Let's say Kyrie misses exactly half the season and AD plays whatever he's averaged the last 7 years, like 60 to 65 games. Do you think the Mavs can realistically compete for a top 6 spot, or do you think they need to do something more?
I think if everything goes right, this could be a top 6 team. I think there's a lot that would have to go right, and I just have, again, obviously, as we keep saying, so much of it is just missing Kyrie for all. But if he misses, if he comes back halfway through the year, has a long runway to get back to himself, but also doesn't need much, is just kind of pretty quickly himself again. If Cooper jumps into, he's averaging 16, 17 points from the jump, making 37% of his threes. If D'Angelo has a year more like he did a couple seasons ago with the Lakers, and you also have the runway that Kyrie is going to start taking some of his minutes. You're not relying on D'Angelo in the postseason. If all the size, all the zone defense, all the if all of that just kind of clicks and works, if you move, maybe you realize Daniel Gafford does get moved at the deadline, but you stay afloat. You're 500, you're a couple games over 500 at the 41 game mark, and that's when Kyrie's coming back. That does set you up in a position to get a top 6 seed potentially. I think it's a lot that has to go right, but I think it's plausible, and I don't because so much of it is tied to Kyrie and his rehab and when he comes back and how he looks once he gets back, I don't know if there's like, without trading Anthony Davis, I don't know if there's just a PJ or a Gafford swap away from this team looking drastically different and drastically more ready to compete. Again, another thing of it, as we keep saying, is like Cooper's going to be awesome from the jump, but the ways, the areas that Dallas needs him to be good, you know, as somebody who can create advantages, like get into the paint, get to the rim against players who are assigned to guard him, not just mismatch ball, not just weak side stuff, not just attacking closeouts, not just transition, because he's going to be good at all that. He's going to be good at all of those things right away. And he's probably going to be good at like being just a number one option as well. But that is something like we got to see how quickly that comes along, because it's not something that he was, you know, he wasn't drafted because that is his best skill. He was drafted because everything else is his best skill. And he can also maybe be a number one option on top of that. So I just think go into next season with cautious optimism is how I would see it. Cautious optimism that even if it doesn't work, you've absolutely got the makings of a incredible team the year after next. And if we're right, and maybe we're not, but if we're right about like some of the things that are going to hold back Dallas next season, you're still going into next season with all of the players, all of, you know, everything that you have the ability to trade. It's still in your control. It's not going to lose value. And you can start making those tweaks and those changes and adjust to that, which is going to match Kyrie's timeline and when he's fully rehabbed and back. So all this considered, D'Angelo Russell. I think all things considered, it's a good move. It's going to make sure Dallas stays competent. It is really funny that that's going to be Cooper Flagg's first point guard. But yeah, I think in the end, I am all okay with this business as long as more is coming and the team does react to any flaws in the rotation, in the construct, as they appear.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. You know, again, the Mavs are at this point, obviously trades and other stuff could happen. Mark Stein has reported that the Mavs might try and offload Omax's contract and use the money saved there to sign Dante Exum to bring him back. That would certainly bolster not only their playmaking depth, but also their perimeter defense. He would probably be one of their best point of attack defenders. And that's a guy that also has his own fair share of availability issues. But as you're trying to say, look, the Mavs just tried to withstand an 82-game season last year, and they had an 8-man team, not an 8-man rotation, literally an 8-man roster for like 20 games in a row in you know, February and March. And so they need as much depth as they can get. But, you know, I really believe that playmaking matters a whole lot. And I think that, again, I think that clearly the Mavs front office disagrees with that, or, you know, values size, you know, and interior scoring more than that, which again is their call. And we'll see if they're right. They're betting pretty heavy on it, but, you know, we will see if they are right. As Nico said, we'll know. Any last, that sounded threatening. Any last words, pal?
I have one thing real quick.
Oh, okay.
Just update. Yossi tweeted that the Rockets don't have enough space to do both those signings. So, yeah, one of them has to be a signing.
Yeah, they would have to trade, I believe, either Cam Whitmore or Jock Landale for Clint Capella. And that's another thing, too. I mean, like, the Hornets have Yusuf Nurkic, and we're able to turn him into Colin Sexton. And I don't think Yusuf Nurkic is very good at all. If the Rockets are willing to send out Cam Whitmore just for Clint Capella, like, you can get wings and guards. Like, there are good ones, you know, at least intriguing ones that you can get. And I think Gafford, for example, is way better than both Capella and Nurkic. Obviously, Lively also same thing, way better. And so, you know, there's something to be said for, okay, if these guys are really valuable, then you should just hang on to the valuable guys. But also, you do need guards, you do need playmaking, you do need shooting, and all these things. So we'll see what the Mavs do.
I think the offseason I would have liked just a touch better is if you actually had moved Gafford for Sexton and also got D'Angelo, because neither of them by themselves fill what to me is the two biggest weaknesses. It's like you need somebody to make shots, to make threes that opponents fear, and you need someone to guard the other team's best guard, you know, those star guards. And D'Angelo does one of those things. Sexton does the other one. Sexton is not nearly, as dangerous of a three-point shooter. But like what I saw in the NBA postseason is that you do need two guards. You need two creative type guys. And that can all work within the context of a team that also has like a big, a big four who's always looking for matchup, post-up advantages. We saw Indiana do that with Siakam and Miles Turner. That can work with a Cooper Flagg on the wings, who is absolutely getting a bunch of touches. But also sometimes, because he's a rookie, you're trying to set him up in plus situations, advantageous situations. But again, it's none of this is guaranteed to make Dallas, a top 6 team or a title contender unless Kyrie Irving comes back early and fairly immediately regains his ability to be Kyrie Irving, because Kyrie Irving is the piece that you must have if you're going to be a title contender. There's not really any other scenario to it for me.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be a contender, the two most important things are Kyrie and AD. Those are your two players right now that are the best players on your team. Cooper Flagg eventually could join that conversation. Maybe he will from opening night. Maybe Cooper Flagg is going to be the best player on the team by the end of the year, but you can't count on that. So AD's health and Kyrie's health is paramount. Kyrie's health is already in major question. He's going to miss a ton of time, and AD has missed, I forget what the number is, I just looked it up. He's played less than 60 games or missed more than 24 games or whatever the arbitrary cutoff is 5 times in the last 7 years. So it's looking like that dude is not going to play enough to be eligible for awards. Not that awards matter, but like that gives you an idea. He's going to miss a lot of time, and every game that he and Kyrie miss is going to be very bad. Every time that both of those guys play, you're going to have a chance to win, because those are two of the top 20 or 30 players in the league, maybe higher up than that even, especially on their best days. And, Flagg, by the end of the year, maybe he enters that conversation too. Maybe he's already one of the 50 best players in the league. Maybe he's already one of the 40 best players in the league. We'll see. But those guys' health, those guys' availability, those guys' fitness, those guys' keeping them available and keeping them performing at a high level is the most important thing. It's just unfortunate that there's going to be a giant, ugly asterisk on that to start the year. But hopefully D'Angelo Russell is able to paper over that. We'll see. And the Mavs offseason might not be done. We will be live again.
They just need him to OJ Mayo it. He's just got to be good for the first 41.
Go for it. Yeah.
He's got to have a good 41.
Yeah.
First 41. And then if everything falls off in the second 41, well, that's fine. That's hopefully when Kyrie's coming back anyway.
Hopefully when he comes back.
Yeah.
Hopefully when he comes back. You have any I already asked if you have any last words, but
Denver is going to be quite good. Denver improved.
I agree.
Denver improved. Houston's improved.
That's a team that almost beat OKC too.
OKC's on top. So that's your 1, 2, 3 plus Minnesota probably. That's your 1, 2, 3,
Maybe
4
the
in the West. Clippers certainly, always a health question with them, but that's probably your 5th seed. So realistically for Dallas, and again, anything can happen. Any one of these teams can go through an injury crisis.
Warriors potentially getting better.
We'll see.
A lot of teams getting better.
But
a lot of teams getting better.
I see 5 teams that should have a pretty firm hold on the top 5. So Dallas is in a big bag of interesting, talented rosters all around them. If they're going to go for 6, anything can happen. It's tough to be in the play-in and push your way all the way to a title.
It's a mess out there, folks. It is a mess. We're going to try and navigate it one day at a time. If nothing else happens tonight, we will be live again tomorrow at noon right here on youtube.com/@DLLS_sports. So make sure that you are smashing that subscribe button every chance you get, locked in on all the action. Tomorrow we will be joined by Kevin Gray. We'll be joined once again by Mark Stein. Tim will be here. I will be here. Tanner will be producing again. Hopefully each of you will be in the chat with us as well. Make sure you follow DLLS_Mavs to make sure you know when we're going live, and also to keep up to date with all of the news and notes from around the league. That's Tim_Cato. We got whatever Kevin's is. Kevin Gray Jr. Sports, I think.
Kevin Gray Sports.
Kevin Gray Sports, I think. Dialing up at the Stein line. Again, that's Tanner. I'm Bobby. We are going to be out of here in a matter of seconds. But before then, I just want to let you know, hey, you're awesome. You're doing your best. I see it, and I appreciate it, and I respect it. All right. We'll see you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.